one of the first few days of, school and band, I come rolling in on my motorcycle with the body of the tuba slung around me normal. But I'd put my arm through the bell, taken the bell off, put my arm through the bell so that the big part was up here, up by your shoulder. And the bore part was down by your hands. And so I just drove my tuba to rehearsal. And I get there, and Wilcox is up on the tower, and he looks at me and he says, motion be over. I said, "Hey, boss, what's up?" I'm still on the bike. And he says, "Do you happen to have a physics class?" And I said, "Nope." He said, "Have you ever had a physics class?" I said, "Nope." He said, "Wile E. Coyote, that's the only reason why this is working for you." "Hey, Dave, can she keep her horn in the back of your van?" Because that was before we had any storage for anything. I mean, we were wrapping tubas in blankets because we didn't have cases for them.
Yeah, I didn't even think about that.
Oh, it was a whole thing.
How about that?
But that's my favorite story.
Very cool. Very cool. So, tell me about your time in the band. You were one of the first female tuba players.
Yeah, wasn't the first, but one a couple of seasons in. And everybody was great. They were wonderful. The guys in the tuba section, we were tubas. That's the best way to say it. We had fun. We'd have Sunday night spaghetti dinners and just be ridiculous.
Excellent.
Yeah, it was a good time, and clearly I was during the Wilcox era. But it's been so much fun through all the years, and you look back and you really don't think about how sweaty and hot you were out in the mud bowl, or how you'd slipped and fallen in the mud bowl. But it was good times. Not very helpful, am I?
No, that's good. What years?
77 through 81.
So you marched to both stadiums.
Yeah.
So tell me about those two different experiences.
Completely different. There was nothing better than running out of that stinky little tunnel in the old field. I don't know how to. You've probably had several other people describe it, but it was just magic. And then the first year at the new stadium, we did not have tunnels. That whole south end was just dirt because they just built the others. They didn't even have the horseshoe complete or in on the other side either. So it was just bleachers on both sides. And we just kind of hid back behind the bleachers and ran out, and it just didn't seem right. It's just not the same.
Not quite the same wall of sound.
Or, it just, when you were in the tunnel back at the old stadium, everybody was revved up. But with the new way, it just was like, not the same. Not the same. When we got the new brass tubas, I asked Wilcox if I could cannibalize one of the a couple of the old fiberglasses to have a horn to bring back and forth for homecoming. And he said, yeah, no problem. So I cannibalized probably 3 horns to put one together that would work. And last weekend, my daughter Lauren and my grandson Henry came over to visit, and we put the horn in her car and said, Henry, now you have a horn that you can practice at home. And so she's got it down at Follies, seeing if it can be reconditioned.
Very good.
Maybe not. It's been 40 years.
Well, I'm sure Casey will do all they can. Let's see. Do you have a favorite trip from your time in the band?
There were so many trips because I was also the Kappa sponsor.
Right.
So I went on several of those trips. But while I was in band, it was probably... We went to Spencer for the Walnut Festival, and it rained, and it was muddy, and it was a mess. And we were doing a chart called Soused Mouse. And the flags did a sit drop, and the tuba skipped down through the lines, and it was, after it was over, people got back on the buses. There were shoes missing. One of them was mine. Just lots of fun stuff. And that may have, I don't know where we were going other than that, but it was a fun trip just because of
very good.
Of that performance.
Lots of people talk about Virginia Tech in 80.
Oh, man. Yeah. That was, I don't know how to describe it. The tech band was not necessarily kind to us. But we tended to have a good time anyway, and just, okay, everybody just put air through the horn, warm it up, but don't practice as a section. And so we just blew them out of the water. I love that. I like it when you can make the glass on the press box rattle.
Don was really good about bringing people from West Virginia into the world and saying, we're just as good as anybody else.
Absolutely.
And a lot better. I think he prided himself.
Yeah, one of the things I miss now is that back in my era, the students did a lot of arranging. And those arrangements were played, during games, or if it was a concert or whatever. And, if it hadn't been for him encouraging people to arrange stuff and all, we wouldn't have Simple Gifts.
Right.
And it was a magic time because your peers were arranging the music and you were just having a great time. I did not arrange anything, except for maybe a party or two.
Any specific shows that you remember? Probably the last show at Mountaineer Field. That was probably special.
It was the longest closing note on the planet. I mean, it was, I don't remember how many bars it was, but you'd take turns breathing through that final note. But it was fun. It was a good time.
And then, let's see, transitioning to alumni band.
Well, graduated in 81, came back for homecoming in 82. And prior to that, I had helped with, stuffing envelopes and stuff like that because I knew the guys in the alumni band. So we get to, we go through rehearsal over at the Shell Building. And we go over to the real stadium. And Dan looks up and he says, "Hey, Deb, can you come down here for a minute?" And I said, "Yeah." And I wander down to the field and I said, "What's up?" He said, "Well, the president always gives the check to the band director." And we had these great big check, for show checks. And I said, "Well, what's that got to do with me?" And he said, "Well, you're the president." And I said, "No, I'm not." And he said, "Yeah, you are." I said, "And how is that?" And he said, "Well, I guess you went to the bathroom. We elected you." So that was my entrance into alumni band in 82. And ran it for 3 years and then stepped aside for the next person to come up and do it. And we had a good time. We had the party after the parade and did the Saturday things. It wasn't like now where you have pep bands and all this other stuff. But it was fun. Nobody ended up in jail or the morgue. That's a good day.
That's right. That's right. And then your Kappa sponsorship. If you want to talk a little bit about that.
Did
time.
that for 32 years.
Yeah.
And just really enjoyed the students. And sometimes I'd have to say, okay, that sounds like a great idea. However, and they go, oh, we hadn't thought about that. I said, that's kind of why I mentioned it, because, you know, if you spend that kind of money, you're going to be in trouble because you aren't making as much coming in as you're spending out, and that's not how we work it. There was also times when people wanted to, to me it was funny, you know, hey, I'm raising funds for the Heart Fund, you know, can the chapter give $25? And somebody would move it, somebody would second it, then somebody else would do, and finally I said, okay, here's the deal. And I grabbed somebody's baseball cap off their head and said, let's pass this around. If you all feel so strongly that we should be supporting these other things that aren't band related, put some money in the hat, and that's the amount that we'll match whatever's in the hat to be up to 25. That'll be a donation. But there has to, or I didn't even say match it, I don't think. No, because that wouldn't have made any sense. I just said that's the money that will, because it's real easy to spend other people's money or spend money from a fund that you have no money in. And so the first time the hat went around, there were a few dollars put in. The next time, a few less. The next time, even. And I was like, okay, it's not coming out of the chapter fund, because if we have 33 members times 25, how much of that money could have gone to the band? So those are the kind of things that I thought were, you know, good things for them to learn. Of course, I also would just say, no, you can't do that. It would be against the law. But they were always great, and you know, they were fun kids. They would register or apply for the National Intercollegiate Band and play in it, and you know, most people had a good time. You had a good time.
Let's see. So this interview is being conducted in April of 2025. Next year will be 100 years for the chapter.
Yep.
So is there any reflection on perhaps the century and the reason for the starting of the chapter?
Well, it started out as a chapter from the ROTC band. And they did real well. During World War II, there was a gap because so many people had been gone to the military and all. But it, you know, like everything, you know, a roller coaster up and down. Sometimes when I joined, there were 5 members. And we've had it up to over 40, you know, plus or minus. And, you know, when you have good students who want to support the band and want to hang out and do things together, because the reality is you want to be part of something and hang out with your friends. And that was Kappa for most people. They wanted to, you know, do good work for the band programs. The song that the chart that they played at the Wilcox Memorial Concert by Julie Giroux was one that the chapter had commissioned. So that, you know, that always makes me happy when something is commissioned and it's played several times.
Absolutely.
Look at these.
What year did the...
When were you in?
14 to 19.
Okay.
When did the merger with TBS happen?
1989.
And what was the history with that?
Well, Mr. Wilcox called me on a Sunday afternoon. He said, hey, kid, can you go to the Kappa meeting tonight? And I said, sure. What you need? He said, I just think it'd be helpful for you to be there. Because by this time, I had just been in and out doing stuff back and forth. And I get there, and Don says, well, here's the situation, because it was a Kappa and TBS meeting. He said, I've had enough. I have had enough. We got too many chiefs, no Indians, and finger pointing left and right. So, by the end of the meeting, well, let's talk about this. Do you want to be one group or no groups? And they all, mouths dropped open, and eyes got big, and they said, one group. I said, okay. Now, you guys decide whether it's going to be Kappa Kappa Psi or Tau Beta Sigma. Deb, let me know what they decide after the meeting. And then my eyes got big, and I'm like, okay. So they voted, and it took them 3 rounds of votes because it came out evenly every time. And the 4th vote, and they were voting on Post-it notes.
Oh, wow.
It was, nobody had expected any of this to happen. And, or at least I sure didn't. So after the meeting, I stopped by Mr. Wilcox's house on my way back to my house. And I said, well, you got a Kappa chapter. And he said, oh, okay, that's great. And I said, yep. And at their next meeting, they will be voting for officers, and either, it doesn't matter who it was, because we'll just flip TBS and we'll have the ceremonies and everything so that they will understand what our principles are.
Sure.
And so they did, and one of the TBS people, I believe it was Shannon, became the president. And so it all worked, but it took a long time for it to, kind of, people, their feelings were hurt, and it was like, I don't know what to tell you. My feelings would have been hurt if you'd have joined, if you'd have said it was a TBS chapter.
Sure.
But it all works out. I'm now a member of both. And I see the point. And because I told Wilcox, I said, yeah, no, let's not do this. Let's give them separate, before the whole vote thing, I said, let's give them separate jobs, so that not everybody is trying to do the same thing. And they did have some projects that were together, like the band camp picnic. They ran all of that. Seems like the alumni band has taken on more of things that Kappa used to do. But that was what happened, how it shook out. Now, I don't know all the details about what happened that got him so aggravated about everything, because I wasn't really involved then. So I just said, okay, we'll just move forward. Loads of fun. We were, it might have been Cat, and 2 of us were moving a table out of our room and taking it down to another room. And Wilcox is coming. He says, hey. I'm like, we'll put it back when we're done. And he's like, okay, don't break anything. Okay. Because that table was a better quarter bounce table than the one that they were trying to use. And we put it back. I get confused as to who was what year with the grad students and all, because when you're sponsored for 32 years, you go through a whole lot of people.
It all blends together.
And it's like, I don't know. I can tell you specifics about maybe 4 or 5 years, but other than that, it all starts to blend in. I kept trying to, I got so much out of band. When I was growing up, we didn't have a car. My dad's attitude was, if you can't get there on foot, you don't need to be there. And so the only time I ever went, I biked all over this town, biked out to Cooper's Rock, stuff like that. But WVU Band gave me a good family and good experiences, and so I just always wanted to pay it back, and that's why, there were 2 or 3 different times when I, told the band office, maybe somebody else should be the sponsor, because these kids are changing, and I'm pretty old school about being responsible.
Yeah.
And they're not.
Yeah.
I'd say, no, you can't. We got on. And so finally I said somebody around town needs to be doing this. So that's when Vicki got involved, which was good. I made one treasurer, did the audit, and he was missing 3 cents. And I said, find the 3 cents. And he kept going over the books and finally he just pulled a nickel out of his pocket and slammed it on the table. He said, there's your fucking 3 cents and you can have 2 extra. And I said, nope. I said, Dan, someday you are going to be a band director with a really big program, and you're going to have to find every damn penny. This is how you do it. So he finally found the 3 cents, but he was so mad at me. Because we were doing the audit at my house, and he's like, I need to have a smoke. So he'd go out and smoke and come back. And, I need to have another one. Okay. Whatever you gotta do, dude. But you're not leaving here till you find the 3 cents. And about 4 years after he graduated, he called me one night. He said, I found the fucking 3 cents again. Bye. Click. And I called him back. And I said, what? He said, I got audited and I flew past the audit with flying colors.
There you
and
go.
He said, made sure I had my 3 cents. So, sometimes you don't know if you've had an impact on somebody or not. I always just want to make sure everybody was responsible.
All right. Talk a little bit about your legacy.
Yeah, my dad was a drummer in the WVU band back when he was in college. And then I was a tuba player. All 3 of my kids went through. Lauren was a trombone player and drum major. And Jim was a tuba player. And Kate was a trombone player. And now my grandson is a tuba player. So we'll see if we can get him to go to WVU.
Hope so.
He may be. I'm ready to move. But he's 12, so he's got a lot of time. Yeah, it's a lot of fun when you're an alumni band marching with your kids.
Oh, I'm sure.
So, good times.